Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is brought to you by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. An opportunity for you to release a child from poverty is available right now through Compassion. For more information about how you can help make that difference in a child's life, food, education, medical care, vocational training, all done in the name of Jesus. Compassion does it right. Go to the website, compassion.com/sportspectrum, and pray about sponsoring a child today. Very excited to talk to a good friend of mine, Sam Acho. Sam, currently playing in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, longtime NFL defensive lineman and linebacker. He was selected in the 4th round of the 2011 NFL Draft by the Arizona Cardinals, played with Arizona from 2011 to 2014, then came to the Chicago Bears, where he was there from 2015 until last season, 2018, signed briefly in the preseason in training camp with the Buffalo Bills, and then was released. And then just recently, a couple weeks ago, Sam signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, reuniting with his former coach, Bruce Arians. But Sam's story is bigger than football. And Sam originally was featured here on the podcast back in episode 5, way back in April of 2017. Sam was on the show with his brother, Emmanuel Acho. And you may recognize that name. Emmanuel Acho is currently an NFL analyst, and a football analyst, I should say, college football as well, with ESPN. But Sam is the story today. And man, does he have a great story to tell. We start right away with what the last 2 years have been like for Sam since signing with the Bears in March of 2018. It has not been easy, but man, has his faith been strengthened and has God worked profoundly in this guy's life. You're going to love what my good friend, Sam Acho, has to say on this episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. Take a listen. Sam, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Jason, it's so good to be back on. I didn't realize it was over 2 years since I've been on. That's crazy.
April 2017. Well, we've talked about other opportunities of doing different interviews, I think, in the places that our paths have crossed with PAO and conferences and things like that. But this is, I think, the first time that we've been able to just be you and me. And last time we had you and your brother Emmanuel on, and it was really kind of neat to learn the journey of you and your bro kind of growing up and your path to the NFL through Texas. But now we get to just kind of talk about all God has done in your life over the past few years. And he's certainly doing some things. Your current situation has reunited you with your former coach, Bruce Arians. You're back in the NFL with Tampa. How good does it feel to be playing and be back in the league?
Man, it feels good. But the interesting thing is, like, what I've noticed is that, yes, I'm happy to be back in the NFL and happy to be back on the team and reunited and the whole deal. But the coolest part for me, and some people may or may not know, in being a free agent the last 8, 9, however many months it was, and then also not playing because I had an injury the year before in September, so not playing for over a year. The coolest thing for me has been the journey. It's been just the journey and like the walk with the Lord in a time of like grandiose uncertainty, in a time of like major like questions, in a time of a lot of doubt and fear and anxiety and insecurity kind of all coming to the forefront. It, like, the coolest part for me, what isn't the fact that I'm now, in Tampa Bay playing with the Buccaneers. The coolest part is that, man, God was with me every step of the journey, every single day of this whole process.
Well, that's the thing. I think from the outside looking in, whether you're a believer or not, people will say, oh, congrats, Sam, he's back in the NFL and God is good and all that. But I loved your perspective. And I think we kind of saw a little bit of that recently on a video that Nick Foles had posted. I'm sure you saw it too, with the Jaguars. And he was just at his press conference and they were asking him about coming back and returning from an injury. And, they alluded to his faith in the question, but they didn't really ask him about it. They just said, how have you been able to handle the adversity that's come your way? And his answer was just beautiful in terms of finding joy and finding purpose and peace in the midst of knowing that God had a plan no matter what was happening in his journey. So I'll turn that around to you and tell us about where you saw in that journey, because it really stems back to September or even March of 18. I was remembering you and I went to see Black Panther at the theater, which is a whole sort of side random story that you and I ended up going to see a really great movie together. But you had just signed a 2-year deal with Chicago and then played your first few games. You get that torn pectoral muscle and boom, you're out. And so maybe that's where we should go, is start us in that journey of from the time your injury takes place and just what you saw God doing in the midst of it.
Yeah. So it's funny because anybody in any job, I don't care if you're in the NFL or not, you always dream of that big promotion or the big, contract, or like maybe that, that new song that's gonna hit or whatever.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, I finally got that, right? I'd gotten the multi-year deal that that everybody talks about and hopes for and prays for, the whole deal. And it was interesting because I got that back in March of 2018. And it almost seemed as if upon receiving that contract, my world started to crumble. And here's what I mean by that.
Yeah, how so?
I think for the longest time, like all of whether it's like my emotions or my doubts or my fears or anything, I just put it all to the background because the focus was, I want to reach this goal. I want to reach this goal. I want to, get these stats or get these sacks and go and make these plays and help win these games so I can get this contract. Then I will not really be satisfied, but it's like, that's the goal. And it's like I'd reached that, but then I didn't realize, like, dude, it's not about the final outcome, because see, what had happened was I got that contract. Then all of a sudden, I was having to deal with different realities that I hadn't had to deal with before, as far as like, okay, well, now that I have a larger sum of money, who do I, like, how am I going to, where do I give it to? Do I tithe? Do I save? Like, what does that whole process look like? Which had always been easy for me, but now it's on a bigger scale. So it's like you're dealing with some of those questions.
Yeah.
And then it's like that pressure of, well, hey, now you're the guy. You're the guy. You need to perform up to that contract. See, and so, and like the reality is, I think people think that, like, as far as NFL, these contracts are based on the future, what they expect you to do. But in all reality, it's more based on what you did in the past. Hey, I'm gonna pay you for what you did in the past, but also now there's an expectation of you need to do just the same, if not more, for you to live up to your worth in this contract that we gave you. And so that was almost like, that's what I carried going into training camp. And I felt ready and excited and the whole deal, and all was going well. But there was just some other stuff that was starting to go on in my heart, where God was showing me that, Sam, there's more to life than just a contract. And even more than that, there's more to life than just being in the NFL. Even more to that, there's more to life than just, being a really good football player. You know what I mean? Like I had focused on, let me just be this great football player, and then God will get the glory. But God's like, dude, I made you for more than just football. And so I got a chance to see that firsthand when a couple of things happened. When we had my wife and I, we have 3 kids, and our last born was born right around training camp. And after he was born, we had some complications in the hospital. My wife had to have another surgery, and I was in the middle of training camp, and I was like torn, where it was like, I didn't want to leave her side. It was like, as much as football mattered, it was like, no, like I remember having a convo with God where I felt like it was like, God, I did not sign up for this. I didn't sign up for my wife to be in the hospital, to have another surgery, for me not to know what's going to happen to me be there by myself with a 12-hour-old baby, wondering if my wife's going to make it. Like, God, I didn't sign up for this, and that was something that kind of put life into perspective. And then, so even with that, I went back and was playing, was practicing, and then I made the team and was excited, and then was, sitting out preseason, right? Because I'm the guy, I'm supposed to be the starter. Then all of a sudden we trade for, people call him a once in a generation type of player in Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
And so my role goes from being the guy and being the starter to not really having a role the first few weeks in the season, trying to find what my role would be. that first few weeks in the season. As I'm trying to find that role and praying and wondering and asking God, like literally like saying, God, what do you have me here for? Why am I here? Because I'm not playing. And I thought this was supposed to be my time. I'm not really practicing that much because we're trying to get some of the new guys, like Khalil, get him his reps and teach him the defense. Why am I here? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? And that question was pretty aptly answered in week 4. Funny enough, we were playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I tore my pec. And it was on a routine play. No one even really noticed. It was on like a kickoff return play that they don't show on TV, that we usually don't even bring out kickoff returns. I shouldn't even have been on the kickoff return team. Someone else had gotten injured, and so coach put me on, and then I switched sides because of the injury. And so anyways, I tore my pec, and now I'm out for the season. And so I go from multi-year, multi-million, this is my team, the whole deal, to now I'm a backup, to now I'm not even playing because I'm injured. I can't even play. And so it's funny because throughout that time, I'd really been like trying to find purpose outside of the game because, like I said, a lot of it started to be taken away. And as I was searching for that purpose, I started to see a couple different doors open up. One of them being with social justice, some of the social justice issues that was going on in Chicago. Let me be more specific. So Chicago, people know about the violence that goes on and the murders and the crime in Chicago. Yeah. And me and my team always wanted, me in particular, I wanted to find a way to be a solution to some of these problems. And, I was a marketing major in college, and one of the main sayings one of my marketing teachers taught was find a need and fill it. And so there was this huge need in Chicago for hope. And so I was thinking, how can I help fill this need? And as I was praying, I was also praying for other believers on the team who could help fill that need with me. And funny enough, during that free agency process, right before you and I went to that Black Panther screening in March, right before I signed, I was actually praying, hoping to go to a team that had a bunch of guys who love God on that team. Like, man, the Bears have a couple of guys. I want to go somewhere where I'm just surrounded by a body of believers, the whole deal. And it's funny because God answered my prayer, but in a way I wouldn't have thought. God brought the believers to me. So, for example, we signed a guy named Trey Burton, who, it could have been a more perfect guy, right? Because, I'm very much like, go, and let's do it, and let's act. And Trey is very much like, hey, let's do it, let's act, let's make an impact. But let's be wise, let's use tact, let's do it, almost like sequentially, right? And so it actually ended up being like the perfect match because Trey and I got a chance to just like work together on trying to impact the kingdom of God for good in Chicago. And so I got this injury, and next thing you know, the NFL started the social justice fund or campaign where they said, hey, if any players on the NFL or want to give money to certain organizations, we will the NFL as an organization will match that money up to $250,000. Mm-hmm. And so my teammates and I had always been in the community, but we said now maybe there's a chance to make a bigger impact. And so me and Trey and a bunch of other guys got a chance to lead that charge and raise $827,000 to go to different organizations in Chicago. And not only do we raise the money, we were in the community making impact. And it's funny too because actually the year I was my 9th year in the NFL, going on, and never played in the Super Bowl, been in the playoffs twice, but happened to be in a Super Bowl commercial for the social justice stuff that we did this last year. And so it was just cool to see God kind of work out some of that stuff and answer my prayer in a way that I didn't think was possible. But the funny part is about that, right? So God answers the prayer, and we're doing this social justice, and we're raising money, and we're in the community, and we're doing all that stuff. But even as that was going on, still on the inside, like God was still working on my heart. I feel like there was this fight for my heart that, like, God in His kind and loving way was determined to win the battle. And so fast forward a little bit, I ended up losing one of my mentors, one of my friends from Arizona, my next door neighbor. He passed away that year. So later on, after being released and being injured, and my wife having her situation in the hospital, he passes away. A few months later, my house, the house I was renting in Chicago, it floods, a pipe bursts and the house floods. And we actually were out of town. We were in Atlanta for the Super Bowl to be there for some of the Super Bowl festivities. Well, the house floods. And once again, look at the way God works. Trey Burton says, "Hey, dude, come stay at my place." He's like, "I'm not in it right now. Me and my family are traveling, stay at my place." So God gave us a house to stay at for a little bit. And about 3 weeks later, 3 weeks after PAO, Professional Athletes Outreach, a conference in which we went and we invited a ton of guys from our team, and I believe, 14 or so people from our team came, and 7 of them got baptized, and we're kind of on this cloud 9 thing. And I get back from that trip, and I get a call from Ryan Pace, who's the general manager of the Chicago Bears, and Matt Nagy, who's the head coach, and they're informing me of my release from the team 1 year into my 2-year, multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract.
Yeah.
And it was like at the very moment where I thought I had found security, it was like moment by moment, it had been being taken away. It had been taken away.
So what happens then as far as, because anytime I think people who are fans of football players and they watch an NFL player, go through it and listen, I'm guilty of this, and I've watched my favorite team, and I see a guy and I'm like, he needs to be let go, or we need to move on. But that's a real life we're talking about here, and a real person's job that gets taken away. And you're going through that. You get the call that you no longer have a job. And it wasn't just like, I'll sign with another team and I'll be in the new team next week. This was a process for you. And I'm really fascinated to learn what that was like, what that journey was like this off season, to try and stay focused and in shape and be ready, because you're just 31. So you got a lot of football left, but at the same time, kind of come to grips with like, all right, God, I trust you that you have a plan, which we say a lot, we believe as Christians, but implementing that is where it really becomes hardest. What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because, right around that time when I signed the contract, and even a little bit after that, a few months after, something was starting to happen in my heart where football was starting to take a little bit of a back seat. And I mentioned, right, my wife and the baby in the hospital, and I mentioned, just some of my pride or my doubts or my fears or some of my internal struggles were starting to come more to the forefront. And I think sometimes, I remember when I first signed in the NFL, when I first got drafted, I had no idea what to expect or I had no idea what it was going to be like. And I had a friend who played a couple years, and people told me, "Hey, don't change, Sam. Don't let the money change you or the fame change you." And I said, "Hey guys, I don't know if I'm going to change. I don't know how this whole process. Of course, I've never been, in this situation. Like, how am I going to know?" And my friend said, "Hey man, all that money is, or fame, or any of those things, like, it's just a magnifying glass. So it doesn't change it doesn't change who you are. It just exposes who you are, brings it to the light, And so some of my fears and my anxieties and my insecurities were starting to come up to the light, right, with the bigger platform, bigger stage. And so and I think God was really more concerned about my character than my contract. Is what I started to see. He was more concerned about my faith and my football career. Because I think he knew that, Sam, you could sign for $100, $100 million, but what's more important is your soul, not your sacks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there was this process where leading up to that release, it was almost like, hey, what is more important, right? Football had almost little by little, inch by inch, had crawled up to the throne of my heart. And I think the Lord was like, all right, let's go ahead and take that off real quick. And so I'd actually, during the whole process, been talking to a friend and a mentor, and we've been having these conversations, and started even talking to a counselor as well about hey, how do I handle some of this stuff with these emotions and this, some of these insecurities. And as I met with one of my friends, actually, I told him about what was going on in my life and family and everything. And he mentioned, he's like, hey man, it looks like God may be writing a book in your life, and you never know, you may only be on chapter 2. And he said this, and it's funny, he said this before the release, before the house flooded, before we traded for this, Khalil Mack, before my wife's situation, right? So anyways, all this happened, right? And it was funny because like as soon as I got released, the counselor had said, hey, maybe we should start doing some more writing, right? Just start writing or listening to music, just ways almost like vent, journal, whatever. And so, and everyone knows I love speaking. So I got a chance to go when I got released. A few weeks later, I went to South Korea because I planned on going to speak at this school in South Korea. And I was going to go with my wife, our 5-year anniversary, going to do this great trip. And it was going to be our, awesome little trip. And all of a sudden her wallet got stolen, which had her ID and her passport and her green card. Everything got stolen. So she couldn't travel with me. Ugh. And so I'm in South Korea by myself. And it was funny because I was trying to do whatever I could to make it happen where she'd come and this whole deal. And she said, hey, you already committed, just go and, we'll be fine. And so she was totally okay with it. But while I'm there, I had all this time allotted for me and my wife, anniversary, the whole deal. And it was just me alone with God. And it's funny because throughout the whole process, the last, the pretty much the year leading up from signing the contract to before to working for the contract, the whole deal, like I hadn't had enough time to actually stop and to breathe and to see what God was doing in my life, good, bad, or ugly. I didn't get it, or to see what I was doing with my life. And so God almost put me on pause on that trip. And I got a chance just to almost like let it all flow and come out. And all of a sudden I caught myself just writing, you know what I mean? Writing. And I couldn't stop writing. And I was writing about, things I'd never written about before. Think about fears, some of my fears and about pain and about, love and about failure. I was just writing. And after that, I came back from that trip and I called up my friend who talked about this book thing. And I was like, hey, I think I'm ready to write this book. And so
awesome.
I called up a book agent and I told him my idea, what I wanted to write about. And in that process, I started writing this book, and so it's just funny because God put me on pause just so we could kind of almost refresh and renew my soul. Like the Psalm 23 talks about, he restores my soul. I felt like my soul needed some restoration. I didn't realize it, but God knew it. And so he paused me to restore my soul. And some of that looked like writing. Some of that looked like just spending quality time with my family, right? With my wife, with my 3 kids, right? Some of that looked like doing things I've never done before. I went fishing for the first time on this fishing trip with some friends. I got a chance to go to Guatemala with this group called International Justice Mission, IJM.
Yes.
I got a chance to spend with them. I got a chance to focus on some other things I like outside of football, whether it's different kind of investments or, different kind of just studying different kind of things I never would have got a chance to study before. And so it was just this really cool time where every single day was new and every single day was different. As opposed to in football, you have a schedule. I know, every, Tuesday we have our certain schedule, Wednesday's our schedule, Thursday, Friday. And it's that way for the entire season. Nothing, there's not much that's up to chance. Whereas during this process, God was like, no, I'm going to take you on a journey. Just hold my hand.
That's awesome. I love it. Can you tell us a little more about the book process? Because obviously I'm very close to that. I'm writing my second book now, and I love the idea of putting what you're thinking and taking it and trying to put it in a book form. And it sounds like you love to write, which is something I don't do. I call it a labor of love, writing, because it's such a painful process for me, but you love it. And so where are we in that process? Or can I ask you that? Where are you in the process for the book?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's funny because my mentor, my friend, his name is Lucas, the one who told me, hey, man, maybe God's writing a book in your life. Well, so I started just writing. And then I shared with him a little bit of my idea. And after I talked with the book agent, the whole deal, and I shared with him just pretty much the first chapter, a sample chapter.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. A simple chapter of the idea of what I wanted to write about. And he read it and he was like, dude, and mind you, I was still a free agent, right? Not sure if I was going to play, not sure what the future held. And he looked at me and said, dude, you're not a football player. you are a writer. And it's funny because and he said, and it seems like you've been repressing this whole writing thing. You know what I mean? Like, cause he said that, the book agent said that when I shared my idea, even some of the publishers said that, right? As I shared some of what I've written, like sample chapters and an introduction and some of my ideas. And the whole idea of the book is like, it's this whole idea of like, what do you do with your fears? Like,
That's
what
good.
do you do with your anxieties? You know what I mean? Like, what do you do? Like, because my whole life was almost like this deal of like, man, like, I feel like I've been pretending and pretending and pretending. But I feel like when you actually like be who God made you to be, like there's a freedom that you literally have to taste it to experience.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, man. And that's what I experienced that during these last, I call it a year and some change, because ever since the injury, really, like I tasted that freedom of like, man, like, hey, times where like the expectation was for me to, I told you my friend had passed away and I wanted to go visit him, but we were also in the middle of a season, but also was injured. So I didn't really have to be at the facility, but I was also known as the guy who always shows up and is always on time and always has all the answers.
Yeah.
But my heart was saying, hey, go be with your friend. And so I got a chance to go and like tell my coaches, hey guys, like I'm not going to do rehab today. I'm not going to go to whatever. I need to go be with my friend. Right. These things that like I've always cared about, like, and just like, I mean, if I can't even count on my hand how many times I was in tears over things that I usually wouldn't even like, would have just ignore or repress. And so anyways, so all of this is what I started to write about, right? Like I wrote about what it was like to lose my friend and what he told me. And one of the things he told me, this is pretty much like how I start off the book, is how, this guy, my next door neighbor in Arizona, 70-year-old man, been married for 50 some odd years. His name is Jerry. He and his wife, Judy, were like really close friends of me and my wife. And anyways, he got cancer and it just wasn't getting better. Like it just wasn't getting better. He tried everything. He even went overseas. He actually went to Mexico to do some treatments, tried everything possible and nothing was working. And it wasn't until I saw a Facebook message from him asking for permission to go. And it was funny because this guy's a believer. This guy follows Jesus. He knows Jesus well, right? And he sent this Facebook post asking his friends for permission to leave. And I called him up and we had a conversation and it actually would be the last time that my friend and I spoke. But during this conversation, it was like when I was neighbors with him back when I was playing with the Cardinals, right? I was just listening. And finally I said, hey man, like, I know that you're asking for permission to go and I can't tell you no, right? Who am I to tell you no? Right? I thought it was really graceful and kind of him to even ask his friends for that permission, right? Anyways, but I said, hey man, I need something from you, man. He said, what is that? I said, I need you to like, give me whatever you got. I said, you've known me for years, right? Like, tell me about myself, right? Tell me what I need to know, or tell me anything that you've learned in your life. Like, just tell me what I need to know. And he told me two things. He told me this. He said, first, Sam, he said, get to know, he said, in all my years in my 70 plus years on this earth, like in my years of walking with the Lord and falling away and walking with him again, he said, the one thing I've come to know is that you need to get to know Jesus intimately. He said, that's what he desires. Like Jesus desires to be known, to be sought after. He wants to be known, like get to know him well, inside and out. There's no greater joy in life. And it brings God no greater joy. Right. And so I said, okay, so that was the first thing. And I'm sitting here waiting. It was just like when I used to be in his living room, sitting and listening and waiting. I'm waiting. And I'm like, all right, well, what's next? Right. That was the first thing. What's the second thing? And he said, and the second thing, Sam, that I want you to know, he said, Sam, you are worth getting to know. Never forget that. He said, never forget that. You are worth getting to know. Wow. And those would be the last words I ever heard from my friend. We had that conversation on a Tuesday. And I said, okay, I'm going to go and try and visit him, right? I'm going to go. Our next off day is next week, Tuesday. I'm going to fly out on Monday after practice. I'm going to go visit him. And well, Thursday evening, I get a call from one of our mutual friends, and apparently it had gotten worse. And so I said, hey, let me know. They said, no, he's in a coma. Like, it's getting bad. So Friday morning, they reached back out and it's like, hey, it's getting bad. I don't know if you got a chance to talk to him or to see him. I said, well, yeah, I'm planning on going out there in a few days. He said, hey, he may not make it that long. And so anyways, I actually, his wife gave me an opportunity just to speak to him, even though he was in a coma, but he could hear what I say. He could hear what I say, but he couldn't respond.
Right.
Yeah. And so I remember having that conversation. I don't really even remember what I said. And I hung up the phone and I just started breaking down into tears in front of some of the staff members of the Chicago Bears. I started breaking down into tears, and one of the staff members happens to be a believer as well. She told me, she said, Sam, no one's going to be mad at you if you go and see your friend who's about to die. And it's funny that she said that because, like, in my heart, my fear was, well, what are people going to think? Right? I haven't missed a practice or a game or rehab or whatever. What are people going to think? And it was like, no, like, Sam, go see your friend, right? Like, this is who you are. You know what I mean? Like, don't be afraid. So I walked out of that office and I see my coach and I tell my coach, I say, Coach, I need to get on the plane. One of my friends is about to die. And so he says, dude, go right ahead. And so I head straight to the airport and hop on the plane. And by the time I landed, I think he had actually just passed away, either between when I landed and got to his house. And anyways, but it was just one of those moments where the words that he said could not have resonated at a deeper level. Number one, get to know Jesus intimately. It brings joy to him and joy to us. And number two, that I am worth getting to know. And I think that message matters. And I think it matters to anyone, whether you are a multimillionaire or whether you are sitting on the corner homeless, you're worth getting to know.
Yeah.
And so anyways, so I shared some of that idea and the book about like I feel like just about being you and being who God made you to be and how there's freedom in that. And so anyways, did that. And even that process too, like the grace of God was crazy in that process. As I'm a free agent, I'm writing this book and I was more scared about calling this book agent than I was calling a team to get a job. You know what I mean? Because
well, it's out of your element, right?
Right. Exactly. So it's funny. I had a call with the book agent and I remember praying, like literally before the call, like my heart was beating fast and it was like, and what's going to happen? And am I just crazy by doing this? And I share with him the idea and he loves it. He's like, man, I love it. Let's work on these sample chapters. Let's try and get it out to some publishers. And lo and behold, we start sharing the idea with publishers. And I ended up signing a book deal with Thomas Nelson, which is like the premier, it's like the largest Christian, publisher in the United States.
Absolutely.
And so it was like, I got a chance to do that and work on that and wrote a, 50-something thousand word manuscript and gave that to them. And I mean, it was crazy because and mind you, I'm a free agent throughout this whole process, right? Time that I never would have had before. I had now, you know what I mean? Like experiences that I never would have experienced before. I was experiencing now as I'm writing this book.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, Ben Watson talked about that when he was injured too I think it was with the Ravens, that his torn Achilles allowed him to write the book that ended up doing, amazingly well and help people. And then I know you know Ben pretty well. And it's weird how God can turn, what everybody would perceive as this awful, terrible thing, which from a football perspective it is, into this amazing experience and this amazing opportunity for you to connect with God and to have an opportunity to influence others. It's just awesome.
Yes. And it's interesting too, because like we always think that God is concerned about our final destination, right? Okay. Like I back in the NFL or man, back at my new job or finish this book or man, just got a raise. But I feel like God's more concerned about the journey. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if I could tell you what happened and Ben Watson will tell you, anybody who's ever done it, I'm sure you got the similar story.
Yeah.
Like what God did during the journey when you left ESPN, right? Like what God did during the journey is I feel like what he's more concerned about. All those things where I was like, man, God, why? like some of it makes sense, but there's still so much where it's like, oh, day by day or week by week or month by month, year by year, sometimes never. But a lot of times it's like, oh, that was why that happened.
Yeah.
Oh, that was why I didn't sign with the team. I went and worked out with 2 or 3 different teams. None of them signed me. I was at a point where I was ready to be done with football. I was ready to move on because I was, it was like, man, I went to Buffalo for training camp and got released by the Bills and stayed in Buffalo for 2 months with my family because my family was out there. We didn't know what to do, where to go, and was training. And even that process, God provided I got a membership at LA Fitness. So I didn't know what else to do, right? I was like, where am I going to train? And God provided a chapel. Actually, I got a chance to do the chapel for the University of Buffalo football team, the Buffalo Bulls.
Yeah.
And at their chapel, and just so happened that the head coach of the team was at the chapel. And I was telling him about my story. I was telling the whole team about my story and what God had been doing to me, and how I was not even looking for a place to work out, but I was a free agent. And the head coach says, "Hey Sam, I heard about thanks for sharing, great message. Hey, if you need a place to work out, our football facility is all yours." As a matter of fact, he grabbed the strength coach. He's like, "Hey, coach, get Sam's number. He's going to start training with us." And it was exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. So I was training there and going great, feeling strong, going to work out, not getting calls back, the whole deal. And actually just left Buffalo because my wife and I had a conversation of like, hey, let's just, whatever God wants us to do, whether it's football or not, like, let's just do it. Yeah. I mean, let's not try and chase it. Like, is this my dream? Is this God's plan? Like, what is going on? So we actually had packed up all our stuff and kind of left Buffalo and went back to Chicago for a weekend because we were going to go there. And from there, we were going to go to Minnesota because one of my buddies had told me about this company he was going to start and wanted me to be a part of it. And so I was ready to go to Minnesota and kind of start over. And that's when I got the call from Tampa Bay to come and sign to be a Buccaneer.
That's so cool. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Let me put a bow on this. A couple things. First of all, what's the book status? When does it come out?
Yeah, so the book will come out in fall of 2020.
Okay.
So around October or so of 2020.
Nice.
And so I'm so excited about that. And I don't know. It's just like one of these things where it's like people have been saying, man, you're a writer. And I've actually found a ton of joy in writing. So the book will come out in fall of 2020. And, so I'm pumped about that. And, yes, that's the status on that book. And even by the grace of God, I want to write more. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing. I thought I'd never write a book. And then I wrote one and I was like, I think I want to do another one because I got another idea. And then it's like now I'm writing the second one and mine comes out in the spring of 2020. And then it's like, I think I have an idea for a third book. It's weird how God gets you going and you puts you in these positions to do these. So I'm excited for you, man. This is going to be great. And of course, we'll get you back on the podcast to promote the book when it comes out. But I want to let people know just a little behind the scenes. So Sam and I have known each other for a long time, probably 5 years or so. And then this was when I was still at ESPN and then connected after in the ministry that I work with now with Sports Spectrum. And I reached out to you a couple times in the off season just to say, hey, when you're ready, we'd love to do a podcast. And you weren't ready. You kept saying, I'm not ready yet, maybe in a couple months. And then even a couple months ago, you said, not yet, maybe in a month or two. And then you just texted me. It was weird. It was like Michael Jordan texted me, I'm ready. I'm back. And you texted me and just said, I'm ready. And so as we wind down, where God has you right now, we asked that question, right? What is God teaching you? What is God showing you right now that meant for you to be ready to kind of be open to share your story right now?
Well, it's funny because like in the past, I always felt like I had to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And what God is showing me, better yet, it's not even about what God is showing me. It's about what God is not showing me. If that makes any sense. Like in the past, I always felt like I needed to see like what next week, next month, next year, next 5, 10, 20-year plan look like. And like the last year and a half, God has just showed me what the day is going to look like. Give us each day our daily bread. Like that's all that God has given me over the last definitely 6 months and probably in a larger scale the last, year and some change, right? Like God, show me what I have for today. And so even like when you were asking, hey man, let's love to have you on. Like I wasn't ready because it was almost like this thing of like, hey, let's get on in a couple of weeks, or, I'm free in a month or two. And I'm like, I don't even know what next week is going to look like for me.
Yeah. No, I completely understand.
Like, I don't know what next month is going to look like for me. So people were talking about Thanksgiving and Christmas and these holidays. I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going to be tomorrow. We literally, on Friday, we were in Buffalo. We had a conversation. My wife and I had a conversation Friday night. We prayed. And on Saturday, our stuff is packed and we're driving to Chicago. Right? On pack our stuff, stay in Chicago. On Monday, we're planning on going to Minnesota to start over. And all of a sudden, I didn't mention this part, but my flight got delayed. So flight gets delayed. And I'm like, all right, no big deal. Me and my family were going to go to Minnesota and kind of start over. And then I get a call from Tampa Bay. Right? Like, I didn't know. And to work out, not even to sign with the team, to work out for the team, which I had done 2 or 3 workouts prior, and none of those teams had signed me, even though some of them had promised that they would. Yeah. And so anyways, I wasn't ready, just because as these opportunities arose, my first, even with signing with Tampa, my first response is prayer. Like, all right, God, what do you want me to do? Yeah. Right. When the Buccaneers called, I actually said, hey, can I call you guys back? They said, hey, Sam, you want to come and work out for us? Whatever. I said, hey, can I call you guys back? I needed to pray about it. I legit needed to pray about it, because when I say I was at a point to move on, I was at a point to move on. And so I'd say, God, is this where you have me? Is this what you have for me? And when I said I couldn't be happier, like, this is the most, like, God could have answered this prayer in a better way, in a more perfect way. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to share my heart, because God was still working on it, and He still is now. And I know it may, and it may seem a little bit more like, well, okay, well, now that you're signed, now that you're back on the mountaintop, now you're ready to talk. It's like, no, it's not that. It's more so like there's a song that says, when I think about the Lord, how He saved me, how He raised me, how He filled me with the Holy Ghost, how He healed me, right, to the uttermost, right? When I think about the Lord, it says how He picked me up and turned me around, how He placed my feet on solid ground. Mm-hmm. And it says, it makes me want to shout, hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Lord, you're worthy of all the glory, of all the honor, of all the praise. And it's like, and like, that's how I feel right now. You know what I mean? It's like, if you knew what God was doing and is doing and what He does for His people, like, you'd have no choice but to shout.
Yeah. And you've seen that.
You would have no choice but to shout.
Yeah.
But but you need to actually take time to think, oh my gosh, this is what God was doing in that process. This is why I didn't get that job. This is why I was uneasy in this relationship. This is why I had these doubts and these fears. Oh, this is why He moved me from here to there. When I think about the Lord, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it literally leaves you with no choice, but you will never feel that or experience that unless God knocks you off your high horse and He puts you on pause and He allows you to really think and see what He has done and is doing in your life.
Well, what you just described is exactly what your friend told you before he passed, which was getting to know Jesus intimately. That's intimacy, to me, the very definition of intimacy with Jesus. And I think a lot of us as believers want that. We strive for that. A lot of us fall short of that, or don't even know how to do that. And I think you didn't even realize, because that was going to be one of my questions. You just answered. How do you seek Christ in an intimate way? That's it. Man, that's it. I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. And it's cool because this isn't even close to being done. This whole, you talked about the book and the guy telling you have a book. Like, you're just on chapter, whatever it is, 4, 2, whatever it is, of the rest of your life. And that's what the cool thing about this is, just God still getting started with you in where you are. I love it. And you don't have to pretend to have it all figured out. Sam, you're the best, man. I appreciate you. We'll be watching you on Sundays for the last few weeks, hopefully with Tampa. And then we know that even if that doesn't work out or whatever happens, that God's got it completely in control, and you're aware of that. So that's cool, man. I'm wishing you nothing but the best, buddy. Thanks for being here.
No, thank you so much. If I can just add one more cool thing that kind of You talked about the whole "I'm ready" thing.
Please do.
And I think sometimes a lot of guys, maybe we realize and maybe we don't, how we inspire each other. But even watching Nick Foles, watching that interview, like that's what helped me realize, okay, it's time.
Really?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Watching his interview, because I mean, there was something that happened week one, injured, out for however long, 12 weeks, whatever. And God was doing something. And then everyone knew what happened with his wife and the baby, there's so much that was going on, and but God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was time for me. It was time.
I love it, brother. Listen, I'm so proud of you. I love you, and I'm so glad that you were able to come on the podcast. And I look forward to seeing you maybe in Miami at the Super Bowl or after that at PAO, certainly. And just excited for all God's doing.
Definitely, man. Love you too, Jason.
All right, brother. That was Sam Acho with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But Sam, as you heard, is way more than an NFL player, and God's given him a great platform to be able to share his story because of football. But man, is he more than that. I mean, what an incredible man of God Sam Acho is. I'm so excited for his new book, which I didn't honestly know about. Sam's a good friend, but he's been keeping this under wraps. And in the fall of 2020, we'll make sure we get him back on the show, hopefully, God willing, to talk about his new book. And gosh, he's doing such great things in Sam's life. And I just thought this was a really powerful interview from a guy who is fully aware of where he is and who he is and whose he is in Christ. And what he shared about his friend, his dying mentor, telling him that, man, if there's last words of wisdom, what is it? He says, get to know Jesus intimately and know that you are worth getting to know as well. Man, if there's any takeaway from this interview, that is it. That's it. Finding purpose away from football. I love what he said, too, about his character over a contract, his faith over football, and just connecting with God. He's awesome. I love Sam Acho, and I can't wait to get him back again to hear all that God will have done in his life after and since we last talked on this podcast. Give him a follow on Twitter. He's also on Instagram at @TheSamAcho. @TheSamAcho, ACHO. He's a great dude. He really is. He's worth a follow, and he's got so many great things ahead of him post football. God's going to do an incredible work in his life, and I can't wait to see what happens. Thanks so much to Sam Acho, and thanks so much to our sponsors, our partners, Compassion International. They also do it right. They are the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And when you go to their website, compassion.com/sportsspectrum, you'll see a list of children there. And they're just waiting for a chance at hope, waiting to be released from poverty. And this is a great time to consider sponsoring a child. It's $38, tax deductible. And you and I, when we sponsor a child through Compassion, my wife and I, we sponsor a 13-year-old boy from Haiti. It releases them from poverty. Think about the powerful impact that you can make on a child's life across the globe. $38 a month. It's basically $3 a day. Consider it. Pray about it. Just look at the opportunity to release a child from poverty and consider sponsoring them through Compassion International. You can hit us up on our social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at sports_spectrum. You can find us on our YouTube channel as well and subscribe there. Man, we are releasing podcasts every single day, but even more than that, we are releasing content every single day on the website, and that's our home base, really. sportsspectrum.com. Daily articles, morning devotionals every day, every single podcast, content that dates all the way back to 1985. Subscribe today for the magazine as well. It's at sportsspectrum.com. The magazine, by the way, is just $18 for an entire year subscription. Orlando Magic forward Jonathan Isaac is on the brand new issue of Sports Spectrum's magazine, and I'm telling you, you'll love it. It makes a great Christmas gift. $18 for an entire year. Go to sportsspectrum.com. sportsspectrum.com. We love you guys. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.